Well, welcome back, everybody, for another frolicking episode, I hope, of Mondays with Mundy. And that's me, Jim Mundy, the historian for the Union League Legacy Foundation. And you haven't seen me up in my garret on the third floor of my house in a while, garret, library, whatever you want to call it. Uh, the last few months, we've actually been using live video and walking around to different parts of the League house. So today we're going to go to the outside of the League house, but we're going to do it from the inside. So we're going to do the old-fashioned PowerPoint again because it's just the best way to make it work, if that's okay with you. So we're calling it a walk around the League block, and we'll see how it works. So, all right. So I'm going to share my screen. All right. I've got to go from the beginning. And boy, after all these months, I got it right again. I'll be darned. I can't tell you how happy that makes me. So I hope it makes you happy too. So let's go for a walk around the League block. All right, so what did the block look like before the League was built? Okay, this is it. This is the west side of Broad Street. The street on the right-hand side is Sansom. So there you go. All right, this is what it looked like. And that large, tall, tan color building on the corner at one point was actually a distributor for things like cast iron stoves and things like that. And then at the beginning of the war, after the League was organized on December 27th of 1862, and they formed a military committee, it became a recruiting center for the 6th Union League Regiment. Okay, but that wasn't going to last because the League needed a home. And some members purchased this ground on Broad Street, and they had to purchase it because the League didn't have a checking account yet. It wasn't a corporation yet. And then they leased the land to the League. And this shows the demolition of that particular building that we just saw in the corner. All right. And you can see the recruiting signs in the front and on the side. Now, the League plot only went about 100 feet deep. So the rest of the house had those ubiquitous red brick Philadelphia row homes, and you can see them going down Sansom Street. And that building on the right-hand side, by the way, is the Academy of Natural Sciences that would move to what we now think of as the Parkway in 1890, thereabouts. Okay. All right. So that's what it looked like before the League House was built, and this is what it looked like afterwards. And this is basically a small carte de visite type image and engraving from a photograph taken by the photographer Frederick Goodhurst, who later became a League member. And this is how the opening was announced. So you can see this is the daily evening bulletin. It's May the 15th of 1865, and the opening of the house was front page news. And it should have been, because after all, the League was, at this point, probably the most important organization / institution in post-Civil War Philadelphia. Keep in mind, the war itself only ended on April the 9th, so it's not that long afterwards. Okay, all right. So now you can see by the shape of the building that it's basically a rectangle with 4 corner pavilions, if you want to call them that. So the first floor on the left-hand side, second floor on the right-hand side. So again, think of that. You can see that rectangle on the right-hand side especially, but you can see it on both sides. And then between those 4 corner pavilions on both what would be the Sansom Street side and Raven Street side was open ground. It was a plot of grass on each side. Okay, but that would be filled in later in 1885 and 1886. That would turn the building basically from a rectangle into a square. Okay, and this is a photograph from 1867. Magnificent quality in this photograph. And again, looking to the southeast corner of the building, looking left-hand side, you can see that wrought iron fence protecting that grass plot, okay, with the tower sticking up. Okay, all right. So that's the building as of 1865 up until 1881, because 1881 is when the first major addition was built behind the League House on the Sansom Street side. So let's take a look. Okay, this is an insurance survey that was made in December of 1890, and you can see, this is the second floor, by the way. So you can see the banquet room in the middle, basically. It looks like room number 7 or room number 9. Anyway, and you can see number 5. That is now today's boardroom. But then there was a hallway or bridge that connected the annex, as it was known, that was built in 1881 by the architect Theophilus Parsons Chandler, T.P. Chandler. Smart man, married into the DuPont family. Smart thing to do if you're an architect, given that it's a feast and famine job. And at the top, you can see on the left-hand side a private a row home that the League had purchased on Moravian Street, and you'll see further evidence of that as we go along. So that's what the building looked like at the end of 1881, the clubhouse itself. Okay, And we're going to move on. And this is what it looked like in a photograph in the early 20th century. So that's the Sansom Street side of the building itself. You can see on the right-hand side, the boardroom, as we know today. It's the first two-story section. And then behind that, with those tall windows, pardon me, that is the annex, as it was known. And so that's the T.P. Chandler edition of 1881. And the reason those windows on the second floor are so tall, because that was called Assembly Hall. That was the main ballroom of the day. And as you can see, it's pretty much about a story and a half to 2 stories tall. So that's what the lake looked like between 1881 and then 1890. Because it was in 1890 that the next edition was built. And you can see evidence of that at the top of this insurance survey, again, from 1890. So at this point, Edwin North Benson, president of the Union League, wealthy man and benefactor of the league in many, many ways, donated $10,500 roughly so that they could build an annex that would have space for 5 additional pool tables, okay? Because because on the first floor of the annex, all right, think of the first floor of the league house today. Actually, think of where 1862 is today, and that would have been in the 1881 annex, a billiard room, a pool and billiard room, okay? But they needed more billiard tables or pool tables, and so Benson gave the league the money, and that's what they did. So the league pretty much went from a square to an L, and now it's an odd-shaped U, if you want to look at it that way. And then, of course, on the left-hand side of the image, that's all open space, okay? That wouldn't last for long, would it, after all? Space, what's the old saying about vacuums and abhorring space and stuff like that? Anyway, so what did they do? The league built a new cafe in 1893, all right, because they had already opened up the cafe in 1886. So, but now they had a new cafe, and the old cafe became the old cafe. Okay, pretty easy, right? So the league now went from, the square to the L to the U to just another long rectangle. You can see the new cafe there on the left-hand side. It was a 1-story building designed by the Scottish immigrant architect Robert Kennedy, 1893. And it had a clear story to it. And so here you get the view down the rest of the entire block. So Broad Street on the left, 15th Street on the right, and you can see how all of those buildings still existed on the remaining third of the block, if you will. Now you can see in the behind the billiard room, there's a round circle that's a chimney stack, and you can see it in some photographs we're going to see shortly. But look at the star, okay, 1418 Sansom Street, okay, that's going to come back to haunt the league later on. And I'll tell you why when we get to that point in the story. Okay, all right. So by now, the league realized that it wanted to occupy the entire block, and they would start to purchase the rest of the buildings on the block itself. Okay, all right. And then they would lease them until they were ready to demolish them and build. And of course, we know that happened in, actually, I take that back, not yet. Left-hand side of the photograph, you can see Kennedy's 1893 new cafe. All right, and also on that side of the block, you can see that bay window that was added in 1886 as well, and that bay window is still there now, right? It's part of the business center. Okay, all right. So postcards, they were big in the 19th and early 20th centuries. Everybody was writing postcards back then. They didn't have texts, so they mailed a postcard instead. And these are different images of the league from the early 20th century. Okay. Before it underwent the next major renovation or addition. And we all know that lovingly, right, everybody, as the, Trumbower editions. So here we have an image from 1895 that shows the Union League on the block. Just look at those 2 red lines. And even though it's dated 1895, somebody did not fill in the space along Moravian Street where the new cafe was located. Okay. But coming up, we have, ta-da, the Trumbower editions of 1910 and 1911. So as the story goes, all right, the 3 19th century editions were still extant until 1910. So Trumbower built in the last remaining third of the block. And that's the part of the clubhouse you see on the far left-hand side of this photograph, all right? Okay, you can see those awnings, right, in that part of the building, all right? That's the 15th Street building. right? And on the first floor today, it's where we find the Grant and Mead rooms. And on the second floor, it's the library. And above that, it's all sleeping rooms. Okay, so that's that. But while Trumbauer was designing and building the 15th Street addition, the board then hired him to demolish those three 19th century additions and add a new middle section, right? And that opened in less than a year in 1911. So now the League building is just like this. Okay, so that's how it got to be there. All right. And of course, the ubiquitous colored postcard. All right, what we would do without them. All right. So the idea then at this point was that Trumbauer or the League would take that Broad Street building designed by the architect John Fraser, and basically they wouldn't demolish it, they would encapsulate it as much as they could in the Trumbauer design, and so that you had a uniform appearance on all four sides of the clubhouse. But when that proposal was sent to the membership, the members basically said, don't touch a brick of that building. The board got the message, and so they didn't. And that's why this is what the League building looks like to this day. All right, now, regretfully, there aren't many photographs of the Trumbauer edition, surprisingly enough. This one dates from the 1950s. So you can see, again, this neoclassical Beaux-Arts design, Indiana limestone, so it's nice and bright, right? You can see the rustication, the coins on the corner, the dormers on the 5th floor, and again, those are sleeping rooms, all right? So now, if you look go halfway down the building on the left-hand side on Sansom Street, and that's where that is. All right, so in 1938, the League got a surprise. Ta-da! All right, well, 1418 Sansom Street. The League never purchased it. They leased it for 99 years from the Castleman brothers. There were three of them. And apparently the one surviving brother had used the land as collateral on loans on which he defaulted. And the bank wanted its money. And so the property went up for auction at a sheriff's sale. And can you guess who the first bidder was on the property? Now, keep in mind, it's a fairly thin sliver of property. It's, it's only one townhouse wide, but it was the Democratic City Committee. Because keep in mind that in 1938, the Union League is a white Anglo-Saxon Protestant conservative Republican men's club, and it was one of the most powerful institutions of its kind in the country. All right. Republican Party politics it kind of ran through the League house, if you will. So, of course, the Democratic City Committee thought that they could, I don't really think they could buy this property, demolish that one little piece of the clubhouse itself, and then build their own clubhouse inside, which is what they said their plan was. But obviously, the common pleas court judge, or the orphans court judge in this case, I think it was, saw through the ruse and basically threw out their auction bid and went to the League and said, gentlemen, how much do you want, or how much can you offer for the building site? And they bought the land, and that was that. So it wasn't until 1938 that the League finally owned the entire block that it now sits on. But fun story, isn't it, though? And that the Democratic Committee tried to buy it. Anyway, here we go. So you get around to 15th Street, and this is it's an amazing, this is called a frontispiece, by the way. You can see the doorway there, and that beautiful, it's almost Baroque with those bands around the fluted columns and things like that. And you can see, again, the rustication on the walls on the other side. And above the doorway, you couldn't have picked a better parting or entering message, could you, than Amor Patriae Ducat, love of country leads. So that concludes our tour around the clubhouse. I hope you found that interesting. And the next time, actually, I think our format from now on is once a month. Actually, we will have these episodes twice a month. One will be a video recording from somewhere in the League house, and the other one will be a more traditional format like this, where I'll be filming from my garret, as I say. So thanks for joining us. I hope you enjoyed this little talk, and I hope now the building itself makes more sense when you walk around it or look at it, and you can see what was there, what isn't there, but what is there now. So, all right, folks. Well, thanks for watching. We really do appreciate your tuning in, so to speak. And all I can say is stay well, stay safe, take care, and we'll see you the next time around. Thanks very much.